Hello. If you are watching this, then you are at home learning this week, and you are going to get just a kind of a preview of what you're going to be learning this week. And then I'm going to also give you videos every day to kind of go over in detail of what the assignment is. That way you're really sure of what to do. And anytime you have any questions, don't feel like you're going to bother me. I may not get to it right away, but please email me whenever you have questions. So this week we are going to continue with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and we are going to read chapters 3, 4, and 5. Monday, today, you are going to read chapter 3 of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and we're going to focus on the genre of fantasy. Tomorrow, you are going to go into your McGraw-Hill app in ClassLink, which is your Wonders app, and you're going to read a story called Westlandia, which is a really good short story that is also the genre of fantasy. Wednesday, you're going to take a quiz over chapters 1 through 3 for Narnia, and then you're going to get into your journal and you're going to do the vocabulary chart. On Thursday, you're going to do chapters 4, you're going to read chapter 4, and then you're going to analyze, which just means look closely to Edmund's character. And you're going to kind of pick apart and kind of identify what kind of character he is so far. And then Friday, you're going to end the week with chapter 5, and then you're going to focus on plot, all the different elements of a story. So I'm going to dive into today's lesson, which is kind of reviewing the genre of fantasy. Now, if you have not, let me get to it real quick. If you have not done this page in your Narnia journal, which is page 5, I want you to pause this video and go do that quickly. These links will help you. This link matches up with this link, and it'll help you with 1 through 5. The second link, this one, third link, this one. So you need to read those links because it's going to help you understand the characteristics of a fantasy story. So nothing I say will make sense until you do this. If you have done it already, awesome job. So we are going to get started really quick on fantasy fiction. Now, with what you read last week, you kind of have a better understanding of fantasy. And we know with fantasy, and I have a few pictures here. I'm going to try and move myself. Look, I'm moving. Of fantasy, and I have obviously Narnia here. There's a dragon. There's Harry Potter. Elements of a fantasy can include so many things. Fantasy is a big umbrella genre. So it has elements of things that cannot happen in our world. Magic, portals, dragons. I mean, we kind of wish we had those things, but they are fantasy. They're fantastical. They cannot happen in our world. So that's why these stories right here, or any stories that you're thinking of that are fantasy, are under that genre umbrella. So here is another question right here. This one is, what's the difference between fantasy and fairy tales? Like when you think of the story of Cinderella, well, what is that considered? We know it's a fairy tale, but there's magic in there. Well, fantasy, like I said, is the big umbrella genre. And then they have different types of fantasy, like the kind of the things that are underneath the umbrella. Fairy tales is one of that. So think of like Harry Potter. That is a fantasy genre because it has a good versus evil. There's a journey, there's a quest, there are magic and powers. But it's not really fairy tale because a fairy tale has to have a kingdom and there has to be royalty. And that's not really considered. But when you think of Cinderella, it also has fantasy elements. It has magic, it has powers, it has good versus evil, but it has that element of royalty and a kingdom, and that, you know, the prince saves the princess in the end. So that's why fairy tales are still considered fantasy. Now we know with Narnia, we are kind of hearing that there may be some royalty there with the White Witch who calls herself a queen. And so that might be considered fantasy fairy tale. So we know with fantasy, and we're going to get into that even more, there's way more elements than just magic. There's so many more than that. And that's why I love reading fantasy. So what you're going to do today is you are going to get a sticky note if you have one. If you don't, just grab a piece of paper. And as you read chapter 3, you are going to focus on any details of characters, magic, any elements of fantasy that you see in chapter 3, because you're really going to see it in chapter 3. So write that down as you read it, and then you're going to go into your Narnia journal and fill that out.